Russia has some dire predictions for the world, and I wanted to bring those to you today. It is important that we stay informed of everything that's happening so that we can have the foresight into the future. Look, I wanted to show you not only Russia's predictions, but I wanted to give you the context as well. So I'm going to go through this. I'm going to show you a series of tweets from the former president of Russia from 2008 to 2012, Medvedev, and what he had to say was interesting. Some people suggest that it's purely propaganda, but I wanted to give you a little bit of context here. And that's important because if we look into it in depth, maybe we can learn something. Maybe it will tell us something about what's happened already in the past, as well as what could happen in the future. So let's begin. So like I said, this is the tweet and it goes through a long thread, and then I'm going to keep flipping back and forth into the context of what this all means. So let's start right here. On the New Year's Eve, everybody's into making predictions. Many come up with futuristic hypotheses as if competing to single out the wildest and even most absurd ones. Here's our humble contribution. What can happen in 2023? I just wanted to note the fact that he's saying specifically, these are wild. These could be absurd. And so they're adding to this. Now understand, this is part of these two sides actually going through a battle. And part of that happens on the battlefield, but you also see this in different forms of media. So remember that. I think this is part of the propaganda that's out there, and this comes from both sides. It's not going to be just from one side or the other. Oil price will rise to $150 a barrel. Let's stop there. $150 a barrel. Will Russia be able to benefit from that? Of course. That's what he's saying. Now, could it be $150 a barrel? Yes, but it all depends on a few factors. Number one, we need to look at what has happened recently, the price of oil, and what contributes to that. So let me show you here. I have it pulled up. You could see as of this recording, it's $80 a barrel. And now I pulled up the 1-year chart on the right-hand side. And that just shows us the fluctuations over the last little while. Like it peaked over $100 a barrel. If you remember, if you were watching this channel, you would have seen that gas prices were out of control and so on. So Russia does get to take advantage of this. The United States, while it potentially could take advantage, there are issues right now because what the government is saying is don't get into that business. Don't do shale. Don't do this because we're going to bankrupt you. And part of that is really just showing us that this is, on many levels, some circumstances that aren't easy to get around. So anyway, $150 a barrel, is it possible? We were already over $100 a barrel just recently. It has hit $150 a barrel before. The question here is, are we going into a recession where there is less demand for oil? If that's the case, it will be difficult unless there's a massive disruption in the flow of oil. So remember that. Look here. The next aspect is the UK will rejoin the EU. Now that, I think, is interesting. Many people think, are you crazy? What? We just had this Brexit. It took like 9 years to actually happen. All of that. And now going backwards? Is this even real? Really? But you see it here. Brexit shock. Labour secret plan revealed. Shadow cabinet member says Britain will rejoin European Union. There had been some news around this, not just this particular article. I had seen many of them, in fact, talking about this was, being brought back into the within the politicians, saying we want this, we want this. Now some parties obviously don't want that, but you look at the, what trying to find a consensus. And in some cases, it might be hard. It depends on who you ask. But this could be something that picks up steam. Now, I watch this and I pay attention to this, and as of now, not happening. But could it happen? We'll see. It took a very long time for the whole Brexit thing to unfold. Is it going to take us just as long or maybe even longer for them to reverse? We'll see. Let me know in the comments below, particularly if you are in the UK. I'd be interested to know what you think. Look this. The EU will collapse after UK's return. Euro will drop out of use as the former EU currency. Big stuff, right? You look at the way that countries are laid out within their economic ties, but remember at the same time, we also have these currencies being used as reserves, whether it is the euro or the yen, or in some cases, we look at it in this chart here, the euro, US dollar, and so on. Global currency reserves, US dollar, as of 2021, is just under 59%. Now, I don't think a lot of people realize it's only 59%. People believe that it's like 100%. It isn't. And the number keeps declining generally over the years. The euro is just at around 20%. That number around the financial crisis was quite a bit higher, and it's declining as well. So when I look at the way that things have been changing over the years with Russia and China, I don't see China wanting more euro. Now, they might want more euro versus a US dollar, but I do not think that they really want to get more euros. They want more gold, perhaps, and they want their BRICS currency that they are apparently working on, and probably other currencies as well. I just don't see them trying to get more because they're shedding off of US treasuries. They're getting rid of those type of reserves. So, and Russia had gotten rid of basically all of them, as far as I'm aware, of US treasuries. So at this time, it looks like that's the direction in general. Poland and Hungary will occupy western regions of the formerly existing Ukraine. Now, we know what's going on here. Ukraine and Russia are at war, more specifically NATO and Russia. But where did this come from? Is that really possible? Well, this is from Carnegie, and we know that Carnegie is definitely part of the establishment. I found it interesting. This article was from earlier this year, so it's not as if he's making something up. But the title, Why Russia Keeps Insisting That Poland is Preparing to Partition Ukraine. So this had been coming up over and over again, and it looks like after World War II, lines were redrawn. And so the suggestion here is that, look, they're going to do the same thing as what we're doing here on the east side. Whether that happens or not, I'm not sure, but this is where the context comes from. I'm simply explaining this. I'm not giving you opinion on what I think should happen or where the lines should be drawn and so on. There were a lot of lines drawn, or I should say redrawn, during that period of after World War II. New supranational entities like the IMF were set up. So many different things happened. Okay? And a lot of it, unfortunately, was not positive. This is where we get interesting. Civil war will break out in the US, California, and Texas becoming independent states as a result. Texas and Mexico will form an allied state. Now, I'm not so sure about this in general, but I have seen so many different ways of looking at this. This happens to be just one map I found, okay? But, you know, the way that the US is built is not necessarily where you have everybody in agreement. And of course, you know, no country is going to be always the same throughout. You've got people in California, maybe they're in San Francisco, that really don't see eye to eye with the people of, let's say, Houston, Texas. And maybe they don't see the same as somebody in the middle of Missouri. Okay, and so on. But you know, you have to allow the states to have power so that if you don't like it in one area, you can always move to another. That's important. However, we've seen some serious lines being drawn, and the talk of actually states seceding from the whole the country, it's gone over the top right now. I'm seeing it all the time. So what does that mean? Well, you can see that different countries have rejected the idea that they need to remain where they are. Different areas, different states, I should say. And that really shows us that things can change. A civil war, possible, but it's not as if it's a simple line in the sand and this is where we are and this is where we're not. Within any state, you're always going to have a balance within that. Okay, and that's important to know. So I just think that there's changes coming politically, and it's just going to, the tensions are just building up. We've seen it over these last several years where the tensions are brewing and getting worse and worse. And I'm looking at this between, these different areas, and it seems like it's a powder keg. Okay. And then I wanted to finish off with this. The Bretton Woods system of monetary management will collapse, leading to the IMF World Bank crash. Euro and dollar will stop circulating as the global reserve currencies. Digital fiat currencies will be actively used instead. Now, Bretton Woods, not the only thing that we've ever seen historically. Looking back on this, we had the different major currencies around the world basically locking themselves down to gold, but indirectly because it was $35 US dollars to 1 ounce of gold. This was the international trade following the Bretton Woods Agreement. Then what happened? 1971, my friends out there, well, Nixon said, all right, we're no longer going to make that acceptable. We're going to get ourselves off the gold because we need to print a lot of money. We need to go into debt. Things are kind of wild. So sorry about that. And what happened from that point on? Inflation has never stopped. Never stopped. So that could change as well. We are seeing the whole world essentially going into a different era. It's a different era. It's a different time. And that is very important to address the fact that what was once in the past will not be so in the future. I really don't, I'm not agreeing with everything the guy is saying. I'm just simply pointing out what we need to know. And then I wanted to share this. Russia and China have a complex and multifaceted relationship that has evolved over time. While the two countries have a history of cooperation and collaboration, they also have significant differences and have not always seen eye to eye on key issues. In recent years, Russia and China have sought to strengthen their political and economic ties, in part as a response to the perceived challenges posed by the United States and its allies. The two countries have engaged in a range of activities to enhance their cooperation, including joint military exercises, increased trade and investment, and coordination on regional and global issues. One key area of cooperation between Russia and China is the BRICS group, which stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. BRICS is a forum for cooperation on economic, political, and security issues among the 5 member countries. The group has a number of initiatives and programs aimed at promoting economic development, trade, and investment along its members. And it is also taken positions on key global issues such as climate change and international security. The consequences of the deepening relationship between Russia and China for the global economy are multifaceted and difficult to predict. On one hand, increased cooperation between the two countries could lead to greater economic growth and stability in their respective regions, which could have a positive spillover effect into the global economy. On the other hand, closer ties between Russia and China could also lead to greater competition with the United States and its allies, which could have negative consequences for the global economic relations and stability. And that, my friends, is what we are dealing with right now. We don't know what will happen in the end, but I do believe that there are some serious tensions in our future. We need to pay attention to this. We need to watch what happens. The monetary system, financial, you got to look at what's happening with the economy, and you got to see how these alliances really change over time. My whole point of this video was to simply show you the context coming at a time in which the tensions have never been hotter, and you look at all the details here and sort of step back for a moment and address what has happened and what's coming. All of these things we really don't know. 2023 looks like it might be a difficult year for many, but at the same time, we usually get these dire predictions and it doesn't really turn out to be the case. So just keep an eye out for this. I hope it was informative to you. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. It's down by the like button. When you do, that allows me to bring you a video tomorrow, and tomorrow's is going to be great. You don't want to miss it. Take care.